Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandal and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back. Welcome to another edition of Speak Up. I'm Kevin Avard, your host, and I'm glad to introduce my next guest from the president of the Mortgage Specialist. Did I get that right?
That's correct, right.
Mr. Mike Gill, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
All right. Having somebody of your stature, everybody knows about the Mortgage Specialist. You've been, you're a pretty public figure.
Right.
You're coming on the show to talk about a particular topic which we've talked about over and over and over again on this show. And that is what we feel we're seeing on an ongoing basis is the corruption found in our judicial system. And you seem to be another, if you don't mind me saying, victim who refuses to be a victim at the same hand that everybody else is going through. I want to hear a little bit about your story. You got divorced in...
Well, we started the divorce in 07, March of 07. We didn't finish it till March of 2012, and $5 million in lawyer expenses later, without fighting.
All right, that's the key issue. You're not fighting, and one of the themes that seems to grab me a lot, and it seems as though the children are used as ransom in these divorce cases. Have you ever committed a crime?
Never.
Are you a violent person? Have the police been at your door saying, look, you're a violent man, you're a threat?
Absolutely not.
And yet your children have been taken away from you for a period of 6 years?
Well, my daughter.
Your daughter.
Right. I have 5 children, 4 sons, but it was my daughter taken away. Not from the court. I had custody of my daughter also. But my wife alienated me from her, and the court allowed it to happen.
And how did that happen?
It happened every week of her not being there and her going to the movies or I'm sleeping over. And then there was more distance and more distance. My wife didn't want to be left alone. So my daughter had to stay home and babysit her.
Okay.
So I literally went years without seeing my daughter. I brought you this letter. This is a letter that my daughter wrote me on January 12th, 07. My birthday's on the 13th. She wrote me this, and I left a few days later. I'd like to read it just to let you know this is the little girl that I left at 12 years old and what she thought of her father at that time. On a brisk January morning, a beautiful baby boy is born to 2 deserving parents. This baby becomes a toddler and now has the company of a baby sister. As they grow, this boy himself to be a competitive and a hardworking child. He becomes older brother to a boy and another sister. His reputation at school develops quick as becomes someone who protects the underdogs. He realizes young that you believe in yourself in order to accomplish everything. His life at home was another world. He was a brother that made fun for his younger siblings, playing tricks and games nonstop. He gradually became a man himself, using the concepts he learned before. He entered himself in the world of business and knew that was his place for him. He started with a single fish market and soon ended up a chain of successful mortgage companies. He became a father of 1 by 1 to 5 brown-haired babies. He let each one of them grow uniquely, giving them the lessons and life skills they would need in their lives. He gave them the freedom to find what they were meant to be. in life, no matter what it was. The children always knew they had a father like no one's other. Someone that stood up for the little guy and someone who stood up, took the hard road in life and made something of himself. This man was a hero in everyone's eyes, especially his daughter. This is a girl I haven't seen in almost 6 years.
And for our viewers, your daughter wrote this.
My daughter wrote this to me for my birthday. This is the little girl that I haven't seen since she was 13.
Now, when I started off the show, and I'm just talking, I was saying how that there's corruption in our courts. And really, in this particular matter, it's the courts that are facilitating somebody keeping your child away from you at this point.
When we say the courts, I'm saying it's the corruption of the courts.
Right.
I find it hard to say the courts, but it's the people who are running it. It is a network of pure corruption and greed. And I'm only asking to look into it. I only have 24 lawsuits. And you don't see a word in the paper. Nothing. Now, why is that? Why, when this was going on with me, and I'm spending millions to fight these people, I didn't even know that there was other people out there.
Well, there are.
I watched your show, and I'm saying, you know what? There is. So what I want to do is do everything that I can to fix this. Bring it to light, no matter what the threats. And believe me, I deal with threats daily. And I am telling you, I won't be threatened. They picked the wrong guy this time.
Tell us a little bit about your attorneys that you had. Her attorney, your attorney. How you caught them?
Real simple. Started in 07. I asked for my wife's therapist records. They fought us for them for 5 months at $500,000 as expense. We got a court order for them. They were destroyed 3 days later.
What was destroyed?
The records.
Okay.
In fact, when they informed the court that they were destroyed, they said that they were burned, destroyed in the flood, and shredding, which would seem completely ridiculous, except that we have them all in writing. So they couldn't even keep that straight. So they've committed fraud for 5 years on this divorce because the original attorney my wife had the records the whole time. And then after the divorce is over and I go to get these records and file a PCC complaint, she's out on a statute of limitation.
What is the PCC?
It's a board of overseers for attorneys. But it's all their friends.
So when an attorney breaks the law or is doing something unethical,
right,
you have, as a citizen, the right to go to the PCC and file a formal complaint.
Right.
Asking them to be either disbarred or get some kind of satisfaction. So you filed the complaint. What happened?
Maybe over 20 complaints. Well, it's their friends. They're part of the network.
Now,
and they kick them out. So they work with immunity. The only weakness they have is their arrogance and their confidence that they can't be touched.
One of the, when we sat on the I sat on the Redress of Grievance Committee, and we had one case where there was a really intense discussion as to when you're filing either with the JCC, which is judges, or the PCC, that there had to be a certain level of evidence. And at one point, I believe it was a preponderance of evidence, and then it became conclusive evidence, or
I
a
have
higher
so
standard.
conclusive evidence they can't even argue it.
Clear and convincing evidence. I apologize.
They put a gag order on my divorce. My side didn't ask for it. Their side didn't ask for it because they're both corrupt and no one wants to be put on the spot. So the judge just turned around and put it on himself, or the marital master, Foley. Not even asked for. So what they did was they lined all these guys up. The PCC board throws it back to the court, and the court said statutes of limitations, which is what they steered me for, and I must have spent $20 million fighting them, and they're all walking out the door. No one says they're innocent. They're not saying they're innocent. They're saying statutes of limitations. I should have known. Yet every malpractice attorney I went to from my lawyers was working with them and the insurers that were defending them. Every one. I'm filing a lawsuit against Morris Mahoney next week. Spells that right out. I mean...
Now you have evidence that her lawyer and your lawyer were colluding together?
I've got a letter here from one of my lawyers spelling it out, and that she quit and couldn't take it, and spelled it out what they were doing. Statutes of limitations, bleeding me dry, trying to close mortgage specialists, trying to get bad PR out there. They were trying to cut the money supply, so I can't fight these people.
And of course, they're being bankrolled in the process.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Now, one of the things that you said was, if I understood you correctly, that you had, I guess you were going to be able to see your child, but the lawyer would have agreed that you could have seen your daughter, but he was holding...
I had a court order to see my daughter.
He was holding a release form. And he said, look, you release me from such and such,
right,
and you get to see your child.
More or less.
Is that legal?
Well, I can only tell you that the judge, who is the mediator, has been doing it for 35 years. He has never seen or heard of it ever. His attorney Tober saying, your divorce is final and over with. Now, you got to remember now, I only spent $270,000 preparing for this mediation. We agree on everything outside the fact of his own release. And it says, of any wrongdoing, him and his associates and his experts. Now, you tell me why an opposite attorney, which was representing her, wants a release. We didn't settle. I spent another $700,000, and she took the same deal without his release the day before the trial.
So you release me from all wrongdoing, or you're never going to see your daughter.
Pretty much. And you know something? I have a lot of other people asking for releases too. All my lawyers were asking for releases. They leveraged me with the IRS, the DRA, banking department, for me to give them a release, and they all walk free. Well, they've been doing it for 2 years, and I haven't signed anything. And that's why they're putting pressure on me now. And I'm not going to. And I will keep going forwards.
How many lawsuits do you plan on filing?
Well, I got 2 more federally next week against the banking department and against Morris Mahoney, who pretended to be malpractice attorneys, filed 24 lawsuits, and the very day they were supposed to be filed, backed up. Said, there's a conflict, we can't sign anything. So I had to sign them, knowing that half of them were representing the corporation that I couldn't, and the other side buried me in paperwork. And I found out these guys were working with them and the insurer. See, what you have to remember is the insurers are calling the shots. There's only a handful of them. So if you take from one, you're taking from the same client. As it turns out, the people representing me had a conflict with every single person. In fact, they weren't even malpractice attorneys. In fact, they weren't even litigators.
What were they?
They were fixers. They were keeping me measured, trying to work a deal. When I caught them, what they came back with, not that they were innocent, that they wanted to rent a floor in a hotel room so that I couldn't see all the other parties in rooms because they didn't even want to be exposed who they were. And they wanted to cut a deal with me. And I told, I can't live knowing what's been going on. If I would have taken their money and left, I couldn't live with myself knowing the corruption in this state.
And if you don't have money, you're basically screwed. There's no way of...
If you do have money, you're pretty much screwed.
Yeah, you know what? You're right.
Because first of all, it's the money that catches them, that brings them in. And then they start dicing it up. And then you go into a recession. And then you get somebody on the other side, my ex-wife, that can be manipulated, which is what they did. And here we are. So it doesn't matter how much money you have. Their deal is, and remember this, is confinement, containment. That's why what you're doing here is making somebody nervous. Maybe a lot of them are nervous. Because I've talked to the Wall Street Journal. I'm dealing with 2020. I'm trying to get this out. But this isn't something easy to get out. You go to PR firms. Who do you think gives most of the business to PR firms? It's these lawyers. They're in bed together. I said it, the National Telegraph is in bed with them too. They'll plant stories. Like this guy, Brian Battersby, that I had a story in there. There's 17 Brian Battersbys. There's one in the state of New Hampshire. He just happens to be a loan originator, and he was in trouble in front of the banking department. And then he releases information to a website about my company, my divorce, and everything. And guess who gets off? Brian Battersby. The Banking Commission, I guess it's okay to work without a license. But they're trying to close me down. And it was all these lawyers, because these lawyers work at the Banking Commission. They work with them. They work with the DRA. They work with the Attorney General's office. I had a friend who was a state trooper, and he told me, Mike, talk to the state's attorney. I called Alex Walker, the president of Divine and Milliment, and my good buddy for 10 years, and tell him what I'm going to do. I got a letter from the state's attorney the next day, a target letter, basically telling me to shut up.
Or else?
Or else I got a target letter. I call Alex Walker, it goes away the next day. And you know something? The guy who told me to do it, he got a target letter too. Paul Russell, attorney out of Methuen.
To our viewers, what is the target letter?
A target letter is saying that the FBI is going to investigate you. I'm going to the FBI to have them investigate. So when I tell my attorney this, Walker, he cuts my legs off, goes there, and guess what I find out? It's his good buddy, Kakavis, who worked with people of the mortgage specialist that Alice Walker gave us. They're all in bed. I've got so much more, and everything I'm saying I can prove. I sued Implode for releasing that information. I won the case, took it to Supreme Court, came back, got a result. I had 30 days to find out the information and who the names were on these people. Walker never told me. Never told me we had final. 5 months later, I lose the right. I finally find it after I fire him. You know why? You know who the people who released it? It was Walker himself in the banking department trying to put me out of business.
And somehow they're involved with the family courts, or is it just more of the Bar Association?
It's all part of it. No, it's the family court too. They are the money players. It's not corporate as much as it is these family court in this state. And these guys work for these guys, and these guys protect those guys, and it's a network of business. You get what you call an honest attorney. That's what some of these attorneys want to call them, because they're not doing it to you. But they know that the other people, they know it's corrupt. They know what's going on. And they live in fear because they said we won't do any more business. My attorney, Bob Jutras, now, I spent $1.3 million with his firm. He knows it's absolutely corrupt. He was part of that mediation. He is petrified to file a PC complaint because he will not do business again. And if someone questions him, I believe he'll tell the truth and tell you that.
We have had a number of people that have come on this show to say that if they were actually to come on the show, that their lawyers would no longer be able to represent them because they would be considered a despised litigant, and it would jeopardize all their other cases, which really, when I heard that for the first time, I was incredulous because that means nobody can get justice.
No one can. And if you think you get somebody that will, they won't because of that. And, I mean, they're afraid they're going to get an honest attorney. Isn't that fun? You were on the outside. And their description of an honest man. But listen, I have a message to all those attorneys who think they're honest. And no. Well, if you know, you're not. Okay? Because you witnessed, if I see someone being attacked, it's my responsibility to try to help that person. Right. Or at least, I'm paying you to defend me. You won't because of your fear. Well, that doesn't make you honest anymore. You have to stand up, just like we're standing up. And if enough of us stand up and say, this can't happen anymore, the decision of a divorce isn't made by someone who's corrupt. Where is the balance of justice if it's based on greed? And who's thinking about our children? My 5 children went through hell. My 2 older boys don't see their sister either. Don't see their sister either, not just me. Now my 15-year-old, who I had all the time, is now alienation because my daughter's off to school. So he's going to be with his mother. So now I don't have to see my 15-year-old anymore. Very rarely.
And that's because she's withholding him, or?
She needs to have them be there to take care of her.
And this goes back to the psychological exam and the evidence that's there.
Well, I can tell you the therapist analyzed my son Clay. Court-ordered. I fought it. I wanted this boy to be left alone. They made him go to a psychiatrist and a therapist because really he was pointing at her at abuse. The therapist came back in court and said he should never see his mother again. Now, Clay was about 13 years old. What possibly could have been said for that to happen? This isn't a therapist I picked. Court ordered, pushed down my throat to get. Nothing happened. Nothing got questioned. Nothing. Now, what if that was me and a therapist said, you can never see your daughter again? Do you think there'd be a question?
Do you think, do you think that the courts discriminate against men?
I do. I think they get away with it easier with men. So these attorneys were taught. John Ross, Dallas Cedric, who was working with John Ross, told me he never handles men. And I was thinking, maybe because he knows it is rigged that way. And I think they get away with it more by leaning towards the women. And if you're going to have a series of corruption that could be questioned,
It's easier to hide.
that's it.
Are there any other attorneys that come to mind?
What regard?
As far as never losing cases or?
Oh, my wife told me Ronnie Wise, the attorney who had my wife's therapist records from the beginning that got out of the case. See, once they got caught, they left, both of them. And that's when Tober came in and put us in the 5-year plan of statutes of limitations, and nobody was going nowhere. And I didn't see my daughter again.
Do you think the courts are ever acting in the best interest of the children, at least in your case?
I think the courts are controlled by the people in this network. How about this? I'm in the Salem Family Court. I win that hearing. I'm ordered to get those therapist records. Well, an attorney that I wanted nothing to do with, that I used to work before, shows up. Turns out he's Mr. Tober's friend. But he was a neighbor of the judge, marital master. They threw it right out.
Who was the marital master?
Luna. And guess what? They throw it out. Throw it out. I don't even know. I don't even talk to this guy. I didn't even know he was going to show up. Week later, I'm in Rochester Court in front of Master Foley. Tober's from Portsmouth and Rochester and Cunningham, the guardian ad litem all there. I'm in their ballpark, and I get destroyed for the next 5 years. Destroyed.
Can I ask you what the guardian ad litem cost you?
Well over $15,000. But when you spend $5 million, it can go without noticed.
Right.
But what concerns me about this guardian ad litem, I was telling him I wasn't seeing my daughter. I sent 1,000 emails. And when this report came from the therapist that said he should never see his mother, I go to him, I go, what is in that report? You know what he told me? It was accidentally destroyed. Oh, again, we have it destroyed, now, including the hard drives of the computers.
The guardian ad litem said it was destroyed?
Yes. And I called the therapist, and he apologized and said, yes, I moved and they were destroyed. So it seems like I can't get a therapist record. Court ordered destroyed, but the therapist, Cunningham, came in and quoted, you should never see his mother again. And nobody, including on my side, because they're in the bag, is asking why.
Is that on record?
That's on record. It's in a hearing. I couldn't even make it up.
Did you get a copy of that hearing?
I can get a copy, but no one gets to see it because there's a gag order on it. And there's a gag order on it because they don't want you to see. She destroyed hard drives, all the evidence, everything, lied under oath. They had their expert come in on the hard drives, and he's looking at the light, Tober, with the hard drive and going, I don't see any holes because we're suggesting they get drilled. And Sarah's like, she takes it, she looks at the light, so I don't see any holes either. Except for when they brought their expert in and asked their expert, see? They go, well, that's because that's not the hard drive that I drilled, or I had drilled by the handyman. Handyman comes in and goes, yeah, I drilled them. So their own expert said he had the computers drilled. So right in open court, their own expert witness confesses to destroying the evidence. You ready? Nothing happens. No sanctions.
What rule allows the judge to put a gag order on this?
No rule. He put it on his own. I am telling you here.
Okay, so it's
I don't believe it's ever happened.
He didn't cite a rule of the court saying, I want a gag order on this.
Not that I know of. All I'm telling you is
There
neither
isn't a
side
reason,
asked for it.
there wasn't a reason saying, look, for this reason, I'm putting a gag order on it.
No. I'll tell you the reason. It's this simple. We have a lot of attorneys committing fraud and crime, and if this gets out, we're in big trouble. So let's put a gag order on it and see that it doesn't come out. And then what they do is attack me, try to make, I deal with PR. I deal with PR in the racing industry. When you try to tell people the truth, the powers that be have to make you look like a bad guy because they're figuring you won't listen to a bad guy. So that's the attack, and that's why I called Nashua Telegraph. See this thing with Battersby? Battersby said that he lost his ID in Canada. Well, you know the guy who was fictional, but they took the interview in the Telegraph? Well, he happened to lose his ID in Canada too. Through a deposition, they matched up. It's the same guy. That's the power. These large law firms.
So they attack your credibility outside of the court and to get public sentiment against you when you actually file.
That's right. I'm attacked by more PR firms. I keep them busy by coming after me.
Why won't you quit?
Because I don't quit anything. I went from the largest brokerage firm in the country. I've won more horse races than anybody's ever lived. Become the world champion. This is the sport of kings. I don't quit. But I'll tell you, as motivated as I am on anything, you mess with my children.
Right.
You mess with my kids. You took my daughter away. Imagine if your daughter was kidnapped and you haven't seen her for 6 years. Why do you think this is different?
We've had people, we've heard stories of people actually burning themselves on decorated military people, or a gentleman in Keene, burned himself alive because going through all this and the separation of his children. We have stories of doctors, a number of people that have come before us and said, listen, my children have been used as ransom for money. $1 million, we have people that there's $1 million bail for child support? That's coming.
How about this? I'm up to $20,000 a month, and I pay it on time, and I have no problem.
And you're not seeing your kid.
Well, how about this? One of my sons that she got, that I had the whole time, the one that had problem with the therapist. Ready? She talks him into going back to the Wyndham School where they came from, and I give her alimony and child support and pay for him. Well, I've had him for years, and she throws him out 2 months later. So now he's with me again, and I'm still paying her child support and alimony. It was a moneymaker. She never wanted him, which is the problem that he had, which maybe is why a therapist said he should never see her again. But no one cares about the kids. I have to be there for my son. Right. I see the damage. I see the little girl, what my daughter is now, she's a young woman. I don't know who she is. I don't know how it turned out. I can tell you that 12-year-old who wrote me this letter, was special.
You can't recoup that.
I can't get that time back. And my ex faxed me every day, her 13th birthday, her 14th birthday, her graduation, and told me everything that I would miss, just to be cruel.
Yeah. I think the thing that's really troubling me is the fact that her lawyer said, you release me from all damages, or you won't see your child.
Right. And all my lawyers that are defending me are asking for releases too for the same thing.
And the courts allowed that.
How about this? I went to court and said I'm not paying them. I brought a toothbrush in the court with me, went up on the witness stand with my toothbrush saying I'm not paying you, I'll go to jail. This was the $270 that I had to pay for the mediation. I go, Your Honor, he asked for his own release. The marital master couldn't hear it because I guess potentially he can't throw me to jail.
Right. So
they sent me to the judge and I declared the same thing. Prepared to go to jail. She held back her decision, and her decision was nothing. I guess it was okay. And I went on to spend another $700,000. So I guess if the lawyer wants his release, nobody gets the deal, and I don't get to see my daughter. And that's exactly what happened.
That sounds like bribery.
Right. And my attorney representing me is too scared to file a PCC complaint, Bob Jutras. He won't even tell anybody. Judge Ashley, I came to her and said, look at this. This is what happened. No one disputes it. We have it in writing. It wasn't like there was an explanation. There wasn't.
Where do we go from here now? You're filing are you filing a federal lawsuit?
I'm filing against the Banking Commission. And I know we're trying to keep this to the marital thing.
We can actually do another show on that as well.
I'll give you things you won't believe. I'll tell you about FRM. I'll tell you why they had it done, everything. My goal is to clean this up, is to start momentum, start this, really what you guys have already been doing. I'd like to jump on board, and I'd like other people. I think other people are going to say, this is happening to us too.
Well, any help you can help, we want to bring it to light, and we promise we're going to bring this to light. There are hundreds of people out there. I was going to say thousands. I know nationwide there are thousands of people that are being abused in this very, very exact way.
But the scary thing is, it's this state.
Yeah.
We're just small enough to be controlled. We are a prime target for few to control many because of the size. This is harder to do in Massachusetts.
One of the things that we tried to do in our last election, we tried to get a bill passed called CACR 26. This was just a small step for the people to have a voice, a step where people could challenge the rules of the court by talking to their legislature, by having a challenge to a particular rule in the courts. Remember, it's the legislature that made the courts. It's the legislature that made the courts. And they also made the family courts. And the reason we have a constitution here in New Hampshire, our first and foremost reason was for justice. And people across the state of New Hampshire are losing faith in the justice system. And it's bleeding us dry. And people are getting fed up. And if you can help with the Center for Redress, and if you can help get the message out, and with the rest of you, we'll make a difference. And if you have a situation that is similar to this, I encourage you to come on, speak up. We will hear you, and we'll get your message out.
I'm all on board. I am not going to leave. I will do everything I can do to help, and I'm not leaving, and I'm not quitting until this is cleaned up. The whole state's cleaned up. When I tell you it sounds impossible, that is their protection. Every time you think that it can't happen, and it can't be, and it can't, every level that I get up gets more corrupt. I'm telling you, that is how it happens, is the fact that you can't believe it. If you can start believing it, we can start showing you what's going on.
It's happening on all walks of life, every level, whether you're poor or well off. Everybody is being challenged, if you will, to believe in this system that constantly rooting up corruption everywhere you look. I dread the day that I have to go to court here in New Hampshire. I dread it. I know there are good judges. I know there are good judges.
See, I don't know that.
Yeah,
I can tell you that they only get away. Those judges know too. What we're saying, we're the last ones to know. We are victims. We are the last rung on the ladder. These judges know. These lawyers know. They know the good guys. They know the... So do something about it. I am imploring the federal authorities to get involved. Right. Get involved. I've got a lawsuit against the banking department. You want to see corruption? You should have been doing this. Right. And this thing, what I'm saying in Morris Mahoney, look at the network of people and the corruption. And can you imagine, we're dealing with divorces and we're dealing with children. But what if one of us was in trouble and go to court? And do you want to be judged upon who wants you taken out? Not about evidence, not about facts, not about anything. I mean, how can we have people sacrifice every day, pay their taxes, pay their bills, work hard, and be wiped out?
We had a police officer on, his name is Tony Macchione.
From Rochester.
From Rochester. Now,
I read.
30 years on the force, approximately 30 years on the force, half of his paycheck is half. And it just, on top of that, he's struggling with MS. Just himself. And, I looked at his documents and I'm thinking, my God, what is going on here? A police officer. The police officers are starting to look at a jaundiced eye at these courts because they're not being fair. They're discriminating, whether it's because of the fact that he's a man or maybe he had some money. He earned it, and he sacrificed on the force for 30 years.
And he was in Rochester. That's where they took me, by the way.
Right.
I wonder if he was sitting in front of Mr. Foley at all. I think he was.
Was it Foley?
I think so.
We've had a lot come in. I'm just...
I think what you're doing, this is what I'm doing, is starting to find trends.
Right.
Certain people win. How does Ronnie Wise never lose?
Right.
First of all, you ready? You're in a divorce. It's not about winning or losing. That's how you sell yourself to get somebody. We got 5 kids. We all lose. My wife lost in this too.
And the kids lose. Yeah.
We didn't win. So how does she even approach it and say, win and lose? And how do you win every single time?
How do you qualify that? Yeah, we had a gentleman on, his name was David Johnson, and like him or hate him, one of the things is that he came before the Redress of Grievance Committee. They looked at his evidence. They looked at a number of people that petitioned the state because they were being abused by the courts. We actually found, I don't know if it was marital cross or marital master cross or Judge Kelly or if it's vice, but they were actually found, in our opinion, guilty of child abuse by taking a child and keeping it from the father. No crime was committed. Guardian ad litem whispered something in the judge's ear, put it in an envelope, sealed it, and Mr. Johnson could never hear what was in that document. And he still, to this day, has not seen his daughter.
It isn't just the lawyers corrupt. See, the lawyers in the corruption couldn't do it alone. They got to do it with the judges too, and the marital masters, and the guardians. That's part of the network. The lowest rung is the judge. He's paid the least. We're dealing with millionaires, power brokers.
Right.
Alex Walker had plans of being the governor of the state. Now think about it. I make these accusations at him. He's the youngest president of Divine and Milliment and leaves. And he works in a hospital. Let's see, I accused the banking department, Hildreth, and the deputy commissioner, Flory, leaves. My accountant firm, the partner, Larry Schwartz, did it, he leaves. They all leave. They're all resigning because they're covering up these big companies. The Morris Mahoney, I had 2 attorneys. Oh, yeah, they both left too. 21 years in there. No, they had to go. Because these guys don't want the exposure, the big firms. They'll see how things blow up, then take you back. So they'll send you up, have them do the filthiest, dirtiest things, and separate themselves. Every case is that way. And then they ask me for a release when I catch them. How about, I'm not catching their attorneys cheating alone. My own attorneys, all in the bag. I've got 2 attorneys now that I pay directly. I literally have my own miniature law firm because you can't trust them. Because this is what happens. When I hired other attorneys, Henry Hyder, for one, he gets a phone call from Alex Walker. You know how the phone call goes? We're not going to have any problems, are we?
Oh, gosh.
And that's the end of that.
Is this just like a legalized racketeering, if I can coin such a phrase?
I'm asking the feds. This is a RICO charge. If this is an organized crime, then explain it. Then explain what organized crime is.
Just a clean way of raking in the money.
I've got hundreds of people who work for mortgage specialists. They could lose all their jobs and all this for what? Their own greed? Their own cover-up? Try to go to a PR firm. I've been to a couple. Right to a story, they chop it. Oh, we can't do business. Because they do business with these attorneys. It's all containment. I guarantee you something, I'm going to be attacked. When I put these lawsuits in, watch. But I don't care. I'll separate and say, listen, don't believe me. For God's sake, don't believe them. And you look at the evidence. Now, you tell me, why do I pick the largest law firms in the state, the Banking Commission who holds my license, and the DRA who taxes me, and say you're a bunch of crooks and cheats if I wasn't telling the truth? What's my motivation? But I won't be, again, the average guy, they're going to intimidate. And it is intimidating. But again, it's my kids.
Right.
And they breached something that you don't do. And for that, this is going to be my new hobby, is to punish them all.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show, and you'll come back again as a follow-up?
I'll keep coming back.
Okay.
I've got other things coming up, too.
We had police officer Tony come on, and the second time around, he said, you know, the first time I came on the show, somebody must have watched it because they even came harder after him. So, you know, if police officers aren't safe, you know, we really need to...
They found out I was coming here? They gave me a labor audit.
Really?
Really. So I'm dealing with the IRS, the DRA, Banking Commission, the AG's office, labor. Every state organization, now that I'm picking on the state, is coming. I mean, you tell me, I got multiple audits. And the labor, I never got audited in 23 years, ever. Banking Commission's in there, but see, they're gathering their powers.
Well, this would be a particular reason why the people of New Hampshire also need a redress committee. The current people in power thought it in their wisdom to get rid of it, but when the branches of government fail, when you have no place to turn, when all these organizations start piling on you, who do you go to? If you're finding no satisfaction with your own attorneys, if you're finding that there are questionable decisions in the courts, and there's a cloud over true justice, where do the people of New Hampshire go? That's why we have a Constitution. Article 31, Article 32. You have a right to petition your government for the harms that they do. And when you wipe out a committee that is designed to specifically do that, you take away the voice of the people. We need to have a redress of grievance committee reestablished. It is not a kangaroo court. That's what they want you to believe. It's a place where people can bring their evidence and say, this is what happened. We had the Jeffrey Frost case where he was brutalized by the Attorney General and the Banking Commission. It cost him $185,000 to defend himself. Well, if he didn't have the $185,000, he would have had a $500,000 fine, and he'd have been in prison for at least 8 years. But sure enough, he had the money. Now he's out of the money for defending himself. And when the Attorney General's office came to the committee, what did they say? Well, we misinterpreted the law. Well, that's $185,000 out of his pocket because, oops. You see, you need a place to go and talk. And I'm glad that you come on this show. We need a redress of grievance committee. We need it, that has power to subpoena and to bring to light the corruption. It's gone. Why was it shut down? That's what I'd like to ask Speaker Norelli. Your case is a case that is happening, and it has broader effects that some people are struggling just with DCYF. They're struggling with...
And that's what I'd like to help, too.
Right.
I'd like to help because maybe we can help them. Maybe we can get a class action thing together, and I'd like to donate and contribute to help other people doing it. I don't see anything better than that and trying to help families and children. But we got to do it together. When you're saying, how do we do it? You don't go to these guys. You don't go to the authorities. You don't go to this. I'm begging the feds, and if you're hearing me, do something.
Right.
But more voices.
Right.
More voices, and I'll do whatever I can do to help that.
Speak up and be heard. Listen, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Okay, thank you,
All right,
Kevin.
and we're going to be back. If you want to help out, if you want to contribute to the Center of Redress of Grievances, the Center of Redress, write me at P.O. Box 207, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03061. If you have a story, email me at speakupnh@gmail.com. We'll listen, and we'll let you get heard. Until next week, thanks a lot. Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list
goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up. To stand up and fight back.